All right. The next part of this lesson is talking about something called standard form. Now, standard form isn't a really hard concept to understand, but you're used to seeing equations in this form: y equals mx plus b. So an example of that might be y equals negative 2x plus 4, or y equals, 1/3 x, minus 7/2. These are all equations in this slope-intercept form. All right. We are going to look at what if you get something that's in a different form, and what can we call that, and how can we use that? All right. So this is called standard form. Now, standard form is a very specific kind of form that is used throughout algebra. It's very useful for certain things, and later on we'll talk about solving systems of equations and other things like that, and standard form is definitely great for that. All right, in some aspects, and especially when you take algebra in your freshman year in high school, you're going to do a lot of things with standard form, and you'll come to actually probably prefer it for solving equations. I think slope-intercept form is better for graphing, but standard form is better for solving things. So this is kind of what it looks like. You're going to have, so the identifying characteristics of standard form. The first thing is x and y. If you look at this equation right here, x and y are on the same side. That's really important to notice. X and y are on the same side of the equation of each other. All right? Second thing to notice is c, which is your constant, and you only have one constant in it, all right, is by itself. So instead of y being by itself, right, the number that isn't attached to a variable is by itself on one side of the constant, on one side of the equation. And then the other qualifiers on it are kind of listed up here, where a, b, and c are integers. So if you don't remember what an integer is basically a positive or negative whole number, is how I like to think about it. And somebody would argue with me and say, well, it's not really a whole number, but yes, it is. It's a whole number. It's not a fraction, and it's not a decimal, right? It's a whole number. And then the other qualifier that makes it a proper standard form equation is that a, your first integer that's in front of x, has to basically be positive. All right? So I write it as greater than or equal to 0, because there is a possibility that you don't have an x in it, right? And then it's just b. But whatever your leading coefficient is in your equation, whether it's a, and it could be b if a is not a factor, but your leading coefficient has to be positive. All right, and so you'll see some equations that are in that form. And so, like, one example of that would be 2x plus 3y equals 5. All right, this would be an example of something in standard form. So something that might look like it's in standard form, but so what if you had, so if you had 2x minus 3y equals negative 5, that would also still be in standard form because your 2 is still positive, which is okay. And then b and c can be negative, and that's fine. That's not a problem. Now, if I had negative 2x plus 3y equals 5, this would be considered not standard form because of that negative sign from your leading coefficient. So you would go ahead and you would rewrite this by multiplying the whole thing by negative 1 and say, well, this is 2x minus 3y equals negative 5. The book's not going to have you do any of this, but I do think it's important for you to see this and to recognize that. All right, so that's your basic rundown on standard form. You'll learn when you're in algebra how to put equations in standard form if they're in fractions or decimals, and we'll show how to kind of handle all that. All right, but for right now, you're just kind of getting a basic little look at these. All right, so In the next lesson, we're going to talk about how we use this form quickly and efficiently, and I think you're going to like this for finding our x and y intercepts.